Utilities Commission. I am herein calling the meeting to order and asking Patrice to call the roll, please.
Okay, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm going to start with Commissioner Chairman Randall Tuttle.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see. Vice Chair Wesley Curtis.
You can see me, I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner Howday.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines. Commissioner Yvonne Hines. Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Dwayne Long.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Parker.
Present.
Commissioner Charles Wilson.
You can't see me, but I'm here.
All right. And Mr. Younger, Commissioner Younger is here. He had to step away for a second.
Thank you, Patrice. We are in order. And before I turn it over to Courtney, Mr. Day asked for a few minutes.
Yes, I'd like to tell a little story that happened this past couple weeks ago. Saturday morning, about 9 o'clock, I get a call from City Councilman Robert Clark saying that we've got a water problem in one of his constituents. So I said, what do you want me to do? He said, I want to get the water back on. So I called Courtney on Saturday morning. She answered with a smile on her face. I could hear it in her voice. I said, Courtney, we've got a 911 and you're 311. In about 2 hours, I get a call back from City Councilman Robert Clark that we got the water back on. This girl's happy with a 4-month-old baby in the house. And I want to congratulate Courtney for stepping up on Saturday morning on her day off and taking a hold of the situation and made a young lady happy with water in the house. So I want to thank Courtney for what she done after hours and answered the phone. So thank you, Courtney, for all of us.
Well, thank you. That was very nice. Thank you so much.
And Courtney, before I turn it over to you, I did share with Harold that if I got a call from Harold Day's mobile phone number on Saturday morning, I'm not sure I would have answered it. So anyway, without further, I'm sure Courtney, you're going to say it's your great team that also responded. But so turn it over to you for your comments.
Yes, I was going to definitely our team. We're here to serve. So I do appreciate the comments, Mr. Day, and thank you for that. And I will pass that along to our team here as well. If that's, you ready for me to go ahead and get started?
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so let me start by introducing
Courtney,
yes.
Can I just recognize that Commissioner Hines is here?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so let me introduce who's on the call today. Damon DeCane, Assistant City Manager, Patrice Glenn, Senior Administrative Assistant, Mike Wivisto, Deputy Director, Jan McCarg, Assistant Director of Solid Waste, Michael Stover, Assistant Director of Operations, Bill Brewer, Water Treatment Superintendent, Shane Chu Huffman, Capital Projects Engineer, Derek Stroud, Project Engineer, Todd Lewis, Senior Civil Engineer, Gail Kettler, Public Information Officer, Lisa Saunders, Chief Financial Officer, Kelly Latham, Deputy Financial Officer, Jerry Bates, Purchasing Director, Marty Lana Jensen-Guthold, Assistant City Attorney, Kirk Buerling, Real Estate Administrator, Jakira Westbrook, Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. And I'm trying to see okay, I don't see Heather on here. We also have some guests with us today. So we have Jeremy O'Brien with O'Brien Environmental. He'll be doing a presentation for the commission, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we have Bobby Patterson, who's with Architectural Design Associates. He is representing the client that's interested in purchasing the property at Old Salisbury Road Landfill. That is not on your agenda for approval today, but we will be, it is going to be on the agenda for further discussion because we pulled it last month. And then we also have Jeff Coggins with Black and Veatch. He was the project manager for the Nelson modernization project, which is on your agenda for review today. So One thing I will not miss doing is introducing all the staff members when we get back in person, because it is a long list. I think I covered everybody, but if I didn't, I did see Ricky Rubio. He is a budget analyst, and he's on here as well.
Courtney, this is Heather Curry from the budget office. I am here.
Thank you, Heather. So Heather with the budget office is here. I missed her.
How you doing, Bobby?
Okay.
Hi.
So let me share my screen real quick. We'll get started. Okay, just the outline, which we sent you with our meeting details last week. We have our welcome and announcements, and then again, the post-operational landfill management, which Jeremy will get into later, our water and wastewater updates, solid waste updates, financial updates, agenda items, and then CIP. So our new offices are complete. Everyone has moved into our new space. All city employees were actually back at work. They have returned to the office. I wouldn't say back at work, we've been working, but we have returned to the office setting on June 21st. Since, we were out working, many of us were working at home remotely. So we're getting settled into our new space. You'll be able to see it next month at our meeting. We're excited to show it off. The next update is the ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistant Program. There's now an application lab that's open at Forsyth County Department of Social Services. What we found is that there were many people that qualified for the assistance, but they needed help navigating how to apply. So there's still a lot of funds that are available. People just needed some assistance through the process. So that lab, what they're calling a lab, is now open to hopefully get more assistance out to those who need it. The August 9th meeting is scheduled to be in person. It'll be in Stewart Municipal Building, starting at 12. We will have lunch available at 12. We will start the official meeting. We'll start the presentation, I guess, at 12:30. That way we'll have about 30 minutes to eat. Patrice will be sending out an email probably within 2 weeks or so to get your orders, because we're going to do box lunches. We're not going to have our normal kind of buffet setting. We want to start with box lunch. So if you are interested in a box lunch, you can let her know what you would like. And we will also be sending along information about exactly where we are meeting, since it will be different than the last time we met in person. And we'll give you a map of the parking and just a lot of information to refresh your memory on where it is where you need to go. Any questions about that? Okay. We have Nicholas Chin is on the call as well today. He is our summer intern, and just wanted to introduce him. He actually, the Public Works Department, we partnered together this summer to hire a summer intern. So it's stormwater, engineering, transportation, and utilities. And so Mr. Chin has been rotating through the different departments to learn about what we do, about city government, about engineering in the city. And so he's with us, and today is his first day in utilities, and he'll be with us for the next 2 weeks. So until January 23rd. He is a rising senior this year. He's currently at Wake Forest University. He's getting a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, interested in mechanical engineering, and he was raised in Winston-Salem. So we are fortunate to have him and hope that he can learn a lot while he's with us this summer.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Nicholas. Okay. So next up is our post-operational landfill management presentation. Just want to kind of set the stage for this. So it's critical to plan for our facilities end of life. There are certain costs that will continue after the landfill reaches its final capacity, and the revenue will stop. So we have to plan for that and make sure we have enough revenue to continue what we need to do. So funding is set aside each year for closure and post-closure care. And this presentation will provide information on the requirements for closure and post-closure care, beneficial end-use options, and funding for those activities. So again, Jeremy O'Brien's with us. He is with O'Brien Environmental. And so with that, I will turn it over to Jeremy. And I guess let me pull up your presentation, Jeremy. Does that work for you? Great. And I'll just drive for you?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Courtney. And good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for providing me with an opportunity to talk to you today about post-operational landfill management. Perhaps a better and more relatable title for the presentation, if you're near my age, is retirement planning for the Haynes and OSR landfills. These landfills have served the residents and businesses of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County well for many years. With them both being located within the county, they minimize the travel distance and costs for the city's collection trucks to dispose of their wastes. They truly are public works assets that provide essential sanitation services. However, since they are landfills, they will eventually reach the end of their service lives and have to close. But what happens to these sites when they reach that point? That's the topic I'd like to talk to you, hopefully just within the next 15, 20 minutes or so, and then maybe we'll have a few minutes for questions and comments. Okay, now we're at the next slide. Just a little about myself. Like some in the audience, I've been working in the sanitation business for many years. In 2001, my career took a turn when I became Director of Applied Research for the Solid Waste Association of North America. At that time, my SWANA position was a part-time one, so I continued working as a solid waste management consultant. I had previously worked for HCR Engineering for 10 years in that capacity. And the city of Winston-Salem has been my primary client for O'Brien Environmental since 2001. And over that time, I've conducted cost of service studies, rate studies, feasibility studies of new technologies that come down the pike, and financial modeling for the solid waste section. Next slide, please. For those that don't know, the Solid Waste Association of North America, or SWANA, is a professional association that has over 10,000 members across the US and Canada. Now, the SWANA Applied Research Foundation, which I manage, is a separate program of SWANA's, and it has 44 subscribing organizations. And these organizations fund the foundation's research. And I think the best thing about the foundation is each year they submit and vote on research topics. The city of Winston-Salem has been an active member of our disposal research group for many years. And I'm proud to say that over the last 20 years, the city's research topics that the city of Winston-Salem has submitted, they've been selected 7 times. So that's quite a record. That's by far the #1 topic selection jurisdiction. So congratulations. The foundation publishes research reports for use by SWANA members. And you can see the report indicated on this slide, the long-term management of closed MSW landfills following the post-closure care period. And that's not MSE landfills like we were talking about in the intros, that's MSW. But that directly relates to the topic that we're talking about today. And this topic was also submitted by the city of Winston-Salem. Next slide, please. So the purpose of my presentation today is to review the post-operational costs associated with the Haynes and OSR landfills. These costs can be divided into 4 categories. First, the closure of these landfills once they have been filled with the amount of waste that they're designed to dispose of. The second one is post-closure care. Basically, after they're closed, they need to be monitored for 30 years to make sure that they become stable and can be basically let go The third area is potential assessment and corrective action fund. What we've realized, especially in the past, when landfills did not have liners, we've realized that so they can contaminate groundwater. And so there's some concern about that. And so the state of North Carolina wants us to put aside some monies for corrective action if needed. And the final area is long-term management. One takeaway I'd hope you get from this presentation is these landfills are, in a sense, they're forever type assets. They once they're built and they're completed, someone needs to care for them, at least make sure they're doing okay over a very long time period. So that's something I hope that you take away that, and I know as you found in terms of past landfills in your community, that you can't just walk away from these sites. They have to be monitored and maintained. So after talking about these 4 cost areas, I'd like to spend a few moments on each. Then I'd like to conclude the presentation on hopefully a fun note. That is, how can we use these sites in a beneficial manner? And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to guess one of the case studies that I'm going to present. You can put it in the chat window if you like to do that type of thing, but I'll give you a case study that, at least to me, is kind of out of this world. So, well, a couple of things about post-operational cost. If you think about them, you can divide them into 2 groups. One group is required by regulations. And this is the top 3 costs that I've listed here. They're required by both the federal government as well as the state governments. And these include every landfill owner must be able to properly close the facility at the end of its service life, and then provide post-closure care and monitoring for 30 years, and the state can extend or reduce that period, and then also provide for any groundwater corrective action that may be needed. Now, in addition to those 3 cost areas, there are 2 that are not even addressed in the regulations. Landfill long-term management costs. And by this, I mean, and I know when you think about it, Haynes is projected to close in 2041. So add 30 years to that, it's 2071. I'm talking about long-term management is what happens after 2071. And I know that, none of us are going to be, maybe most of us are not going to be around at that time, but this is an environmental stewardship issue. So someone's going to have to take care of these sites well past, 2071. And so we want to make sure that that's done correctly. And then finally, beneficial end use options are not addressed. And a lot of people, these are large sites and generally located in, urban areas and suburban areas. So there's a real opportunity to do something good for the community and put them to a beneficial end use. But those costs aren't covered in the regulations either. Next slide, please. So what the state requires is that landfill owners demonstrate that they are going to have the monies to cover closure and post-closure costs. And you can do this in a variety of ways. You can build up the funds as you go. You can have a bank account with the money in it. There are a number of, you can use insurance or other types of policies. But the mechanism that's just been chosen by the city of Winston-Salem is called the local government financial test. And this is a test demonstrates basically through the city's bond rating and taxation capability, it demonstrates that whenever these costs are needed, the city will have the money available. So each year, the city submits a letter to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality showing that it lists what the costs are, and then it shows, based on our taxation capability, et cetera, our financial strength, we are going to be able to cover those costs. Now, having said that, the city also is following government accounting standards. And so they're really using a two-pronged approach. They're proving that they can cover the costs if need be through the city's taxation capability, but also they're accruing cash from the operating income to fund closure and post-closure at the same time. And the reason this is important that really these costs are all being incurred after the landfills are closed. So there's no income coming, there's no revenue to pay for these costs. And the principle is that the current users of the landfill should be the ones that are responsible for these future costs. So that's a real good reason to do what the city's doing now, accruing cash from the current users of the landfill to pay for future closure and post-closure. Next slide, please. So I just want to go through each of these costs just to make you aware of what they do and why they're important. First, closing these landfills. Again, as a landfill owners, you're required to be able to properly close these landfills. Well, what does that mean? It means the major thing that it means is you have to cover the landfill waste with an impermeable cap. Now, the reason that's important is that this cap will prevent precipitation from getting into the landfill wastes once the landfill is closed. And you might add, ask why is that important? Well, the basic thing is water is essential for waste biodegradation in the landfill. The microorganisms that degrade the waste in the landfill absolutely need water to function. So when you put the cap on, you're really stopping that waste biodegradation process. There's still biodegradable waste in the landfill. There will be in 2041 when the landfill closes. But what you're doing is you're stopping the process. And why is that important? Well, you by doing that, you're stopping leachate formation, so you'll minimize any leachate coming out of the landfill. You're also stopping landfill gas generation. So closing these landfills correctly is so important. And again, the city is putting together a restricted fund accruing monies to cover these closure costs. Next slide, please. Well, here's a schematic of what a final cover system looks like. And I just want to point out the green area represents the waste. You can see the waste is, once it's closed, the landfill is closed, the waste is essentially encapsulated. So no water should be able to get into this encapsule. And so if that's true, then waste biodegradation will stop. And the final, I want to say one thing about this final cover system. Once you close these landfills, it is by far the most important part of the system in terms of environmental protection. The final cover system will stop waste biodegradation. So it's a very, very important part of the landfill. Once it's closed, it's the main reason that environmental and public health will be protected after the landfill is closed. As long as it's functioning properly, the environment and public health will be protected. Now, the good news is that our SWANA research in the report I just mentioned earlier, we found that traditional final cover systems, if they're properly managed, can last for very, very long periods of time. And by that, I mean on the order of thousands of years. So that's really a good news story, that if you close this correctly, you should be protecting the environment for many, many generations to come. Next slide, please. Well, what about post-closure care? Now you close the landfill. Well, what the federal and state law requires is now you monitor what happens at the site for 30 years. So if you closed in 2041, for the next 30 years, you would monitor the groundwater at the site. You'd monitor what's happening with the leachate, landfill gas, and how the site is settling. And the purpose of this time frame is to make sure the landfill becomes what they call functionally stable. That's not a psychological term, that's a physical term, functionally stable during the 30-year period. Well, what does that mean? So again, since water can no longer get into the waste, it means that waste biodegradation ceases, and the landfill, once that happens, the landfill gas that's generated will be minimized, and the landfill settlement will be minimized. So you think of this landfill, it's kind of just settling down. All the landfill gas is stopping being generating. A little more leachate is being generated, minimal leachate generation. So at the end of that process, it's kind of done, if you will. It's kind of going into retirement, ready for retirement. All the processes have ceased. And I want to say that the utility department is also accruing monies for a reserve fund to cover these post-closure costs. Next slide, please. Potential, I want to talk about the next area, potential assessment and corrective action. This requirement was passed in 2013, and it's a state requirement. It's not a federal government requirement. But what they require for MSW landfills like Haynes, that $2 million is set aside just in case any corrective action would be needed at Haynes. They also require $1 million to be set aside at OSR. Now, as you know, Haynes is a lined landfill, so it shouldn't have any groundwater impacts. So the money needed for Haynes is probably not needed. It may be needed for OSR since OSR is an unlined landfill. Now, for the potential, these PACA funds, what the city's decided to do to date is just to include them in the financial test. So the way the city is telling the state is if we need these funds, we can use our financial strength to cover these costs. Next slide, please, Courtney. Well, this last one is long-term management costs. Again, our whole industry, and I can speak on behalf of SWANA, our whole industry doesn't really recognize these costs. They basically, our industry has the position, once the 30-year post-closure care period is done, we can kind of walk away from these sites. And we've tried, at SWANA, we've tried to communicate that that's not going to be the case. Some type of monitoring and maintenance is going to be needed ad infinitum on these sites. So well after the 30-year post-closure care period. And not only that, but if you also institute a beneficial end use option, that could increase long-term costs. A restricted fund is not being accrued for these long-term costs. Again, they're way in the future. And I don't know if you can see the numbers on this table, but a 100-acre site, we estimate would cost just about $25,000 a year. So these aren't large costs. They're kind of minimal costs. You send someone out to walk the site every year or so, fix any, potholes, that type of thing, and just make sure that the final cover system is functioning correctly. And the good news is you can likely cover these costs with interest earnings from the post-closure fund. Next slide, please. So to help the Solid Waste Division track the post-operational costs with Haynes and OSR, O'Brien Environmental has developed this CPCC fund model. And the model is used by the Utilities Department and for budgeting annual contributions to the Haynes and OSR closure and post-closure funds. It's also used by city finance to provide cost estimates for the local government financial test. And the reason a model like this is needed is that each year the inputs change a little bit. Like each year, the amount of waste that's going to be disposed in future years just changes. I mean, so that modifies the amount of waste disposed annually, so it modifies the service life of the landfill. And also costs are changed based on inflation. So there's a need to kind of rerun the model at least once a year to update it for these changes. Next slide, please, Gordon. Just here's an excerpt from the model. If you can see, I'm not sure if you can see on the slide, but it includes the rate of inflation for 2020 that's provided by the state government. The last year of active operation, it was estimated to be 2041 for Haynes when we did the analysis. And so we estimated that $352,564 should be set aside for the closure fund for 2020. Next slide, please. All right, just to summarize these costs, just to give you an idea of how big they are, when we looked at these costs for the entire Haynes landfill, closure costs came out to be $1.32 per ton of waste disposed, post-closure 79 cents, the PACA cost 21 cents, for a total of $2.32 per ton of waste disposed in the site. So you can see, just for perspective, most of the costs are associated with closing the landfill. About a third are associated with post-closure, and then a little less than 10% are with PACA. But again, you can see based on this slide, there might be some additional costs for long-term management and beneficial reuse of the site. So $2.32, that's a little less, that's about 8% of the cost, the current cost of disposing of waste at Haynes. So it's not a huge cost, but it's not insignificant either. Next slide, please. All right, I hope we're at the fun part of the presentation. So, you know, these landfills have served the cities that, you know, Winston-Salem and Forsyth County well for many years. So the question, I think, for the commissioners is, can the closed landfill continue to be a community resource? You know, it's really centrally located, and that's important for the city of Winston-Salem's waste collection trucks. So should it continue to be used as a recycling center, a transfer point, a waste drop-off center? That's one excellent use that if you decide to do that. Some landfills are being used as solar or wind farms or both. There are environmental education and recreational opportunities. You know, these are large open space areas centrally located within the city, hiking and biking, you know, you see the list here, a lot of good ideas. And these are all being, have been implemented at landfills across the country. Okay, I'm now to, well, let's go to the next slide first, please. So for a good example of a closed landfill end use is right up the road in Wake County. The North Wake landfill was disposed of most of Wake County's residential waste for more than 20 years. This landfill was closed in 2008. And following its closure, the county decided to build a park on the landfill site. And it opened the Green Hills County Park, and the park includes walking and biking trails, picnic areas, and playgrounds. So again, I think that's an excellent beneficial use options. And it's probably a good idea for you all to start considering these options. Now for again, here we are to the slide. I bet you, I don't know if anybody guessed this, but Courtney, thank you. So believe it or not, for those of you who like to think outside the box, another option that is moving ahead in Fairfax County, Virginia, is the construction of an indoor ski slope on the county's closed I-95 landfill. This is called Fairfax Peak. It's a 450,000 square foot indoor facility with a ski slope of 1,700 feet in length. And in November 2020, the Board of County Supervisors for Fairfax County approved this project to go ahead. So it is moving ahead towards implementation as we speak. I think it's going to take another couple of years. I'm not sure if they've gotten all the financing worked out, but anyway, but here's my last question to y'all. I do not know what's happening between skiers and solid waste management facilities. But I will tell you that in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I recommend that you go on a trip there, Copenhagen, Denmark, they built a 1,500 foot ski slope on the roof of the city's new waste to energy plant. There are no areas to practice skiing in Denmark. And so they built this just for I think for the Olympic ski team to practice. Recreational users can use it, but it's a great, you can just Google it. It's a great facility, brand new waste energy facility, but this ski slope, which is coated with grass, it's not snow, but anyway, really fun to look at. But I somehow skiers have discovered our industry. So you may get some developers approaching you to do something like that. Okay, Courtney, next slide, please. Just to summarize, closed landfills will require maintenance and monitoring for many years, both during and well beyond the 30-year post-closure care period specified in the regulations. And it's just the nature of the beast. It's something that we're going to have to take care of these sites for many years. The good news is that only a minimal level of care will be needed once the landfill becomes functionally stable. Post-operational costs, as I've hopefully demonstrated, represent about 8% of the total costs of landfilling waste. And the utilities department is accruing funds to cover both the closure and post-closure costs for Haynes and OSR. And to date, over $20 million has been accrued. I think that's a tremendous achievement. And will be, I think future residents will be glad that you're well on your way to covering these costs. And finally, additional funds may be needed for long-term management and the beneficial end uses, especially if you decide on the ski slope option. So, and with that, I'm finished my presentation, Courtney. Thank you very much, and be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great. Great information. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions for Jeremy?
I appreciate the presentation. That was very, very good. Yeah, I've seen several other types of options for post-closure. From golf courses, bad idea. Horse trails, that one local landfill we've got.
Okay.
So that's really interesting. And it's really interesting to see old landfills pre-regulatory, what they look like. And we've got some locally that the landscape looks like a roller coaster.
Yes, I think.
With the buildings canted left and right, and the light poles leaning left and right, and almost horizontal in a couple of places, and the pavement within 30 feet of the pavement horizontally, you may have a 10-foot dip.
I've seen sites exactly like you're talking about, and it's a real issue, especially with the pre-Subtitle D landfills. So settlement is a key issue for all of these sites.
We learned a lot since then.
Yeah,
learned a whole lot. But thank you again.
You're very, very welcome.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Stover.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, commissioners. So far this calendar year, Todd's group has issued 31 water and sewer permits for infrastructure value of over $4.6 million. This slide shows the breakdown of mileage between water and sewer permits. About 5.7 miles of water has been permitted versus 7.3 miles of sewer. Here's the drought monitor. As you can see in yellow, the middle part of the state is abnormally dry. In June, we had 3.29 inches of rain, which is slightly below average, but we are substantially below where we were this time last year. Water production, June was a really good month for water production compared to the 5-year average and compared to last year. Our water production was up 2.7 million gallons per day, or about 7% over this time last year. Here's the fiscal year to date, still slightly below the 5-year average and below where we finished last year. Water quality sampling for the month of June, the 3 water plants, we conducted over 26,000 water quality samples and fielded 61 water quality calls. No violations. I would like to point out, we did have 1 positive total coliform in the distribution system at one of our regular sampling sites. We went back the next 24 hours later and tested again and got a negative result. Collection system update. We have not received the report for June yet. We did get the last couple months, March, April, and May, I believe, since we presented this last. You can see for May, we had 1 notice of deficiency, 3 notice of violations, and 0 intended enforce letters. We have got a couple of intended enforce letters over the past couple months, dating back to December. December, we had a large spill on our Tanglewood force main. And I believe that penalty was about $5,800, which we paid. SSO per 100-mile chart. We had another record year. We finished exactly where we were last year, 74 SSOs for 2021. Considering the pandemic, a lot of people working, from home. Obviously our field operations still were coming in every day. They were short-staffed. We've had, staffing shortages on our contractors as well. We had a remarkable year. Large part of that, we had a good month in June. We had 2 SSOs. One was a pipe failure. One was fog, roots, and debris related, way below our 5-year average mark. This is the last SSO related chart. It's our cleaning productivity. As I've mentioned several times in the past, we're struggling with vacancies on our sewer collections group. Even our contractors, we've had 2 contracts for several years now, and they've experienced some staffing shortages as well. We're well above our 10% permit requirement, slightly below our 20% scheduled cleaning goal. I would like to point out, we did recently renew our collection system permit, and it runs through, I think it's 8 years, it runs through 2029. So that is a huge achievement. Kenny Atkins and his staff have worked tirelessly to get that permit prepared, and that was done well in advance of the deadline. Items 5 and 6 on your agenda is the Nielsen modernization project. We have briefed you all on this several times in the past. March of 2019, and I believe February of this year before the capital presentation. As a reminder, the Nielsen water plant is our largest water treatment plant, 48 million gallons per day. There's only been 2 major expansions since the plant was originally built in the early 60s. And I believe those 2 expansions occurred in the 80s, late 80s. This project includes condition improvements for aging facilities, process improvements, obsolete filling equipment replacements, provide some redundancy and reliability, and safety and operational improvements. It does not increase capacity though. Here's a snapshot of the budget. The commission approved an additional $40 million in the March commission meeting, actually the May commission meeting, to go towards this project for a total appropriation of $121.87 million. So far, preliminary design and bidding, we've spent a little over $5 million. Item 6 on your agenda is the construction administration contract, $7.247 million. The item 5 is your construction award for Oldman Schutte, a little over 107, and then we left $2 million in there for contingency in case anything arises during the construction. Here's the final slide for the project. Bids were opened on June 16th, with Oldman Schutte being the low bidder. If you recall, we pre-qualified contractors. I believe we had 5 or 6 that made it through the pre-qualification process, and we had 2 bidders, Oldman Schutte being the low bidder. The actual bid with alternatives A through F came in at $109,465, which was slightly above our budget. So in order to get back within budget, we sat down with Black & Veatch, our operations staff, and negotiated some scope out of the contract. Those items are below. And if there's any questions, I have Bill Brewer and Jeff Coggins on this call to help answer any of those.
This is Chris Parker. I've got a question. As I'm looking at that screen, you said you eliminated software configuration and programming services.
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of tell me how that's not integral to this?
Well, that's an excellent point. It is integral to the project. It was going to be done by CITI anyway as an allowance. And rather than having the contractor, go through CITI and then add their markup, we already have an existing contract with CITI. We removed that from the Nielsen project, and we're going to do that completely separate through the water treatment upgrades program. Similar to how we did SWANA and Thomas last year.
Mike, this is Wesley. So the things that you've taken out of the budget, are there provisions at some point on some of these items that down the road that you can go back and put in if you need to?
Are you saying,
so for example, like
through this contract or through a separate contract?
Well, yeah, any contractor in the future. So for example, like the closed circuit TV system or the conduit, everything that's there, it's just down the road, you're going to fill in the infrastructure and add it versus having to start from scratch.
That's exactly right. The things we took out, were able to be removed in a clean fashion and can be done separately without impacting anything. We don't want to have to do work twice. The sodium hypochlorite facility improvements, the residuals lagoon, the backwash supply tank and fill system. Those were things that we could remove and do separately through a future project. The software configuration, CCTV, and access control are both in CITI's wheelhouse. And we've had an existing contract with them to do that type of thing at Swan and Thomas. So that's what we were thinking there. And the office furnishings, Bill can fund that through his operations budget.
Mike, Carol, Dave, I got a question about how much money is these items we're going to cut out, about how much money approximately?
About $2 million.
So that's the contingency money? I'm just asking. Well,
I will say this. So the base bid amount came in, minus alternatives A through F came in at $109,465. And we took out the sodium hypochlorite and several things below. We got down to $107,445. So a little over $2 million.
So my question is if the $2 million contingency money would cover this if need be.
If we didn't use it on something else, we could add some of these things back in for sure.
Okay.
Our concern was, this plan is 60 years old. Things come up, and we wanted to make sure we had a little bit of wiggle room in case, something does happen during construction.
To add a little bit of that to what Michael said, and we're really talking about these top 3 items. Each one of those could be done as a standalone if need be.
Are there any other questions for Nelson?
Mike, it's Chris Parker. I had a question earlier in your presentation. You were saying one of the lab test results came out with, did you say chloroform showing up?
Chloroform.
Okay, and then you went back and you measured the next day and it was not there?
Yeah, and Bill can probably give you better detail on our procedures, but we go back when we have a positive test, 24 hours later test again, and when we did that, it came back negative.
Yeah, each time we get a positive total coliform, or if we were to happen to get an E. coli, the rule requires us to return within 24 hours to that original site, recollect the sample, and then we also have to sample within 5 connections upstream and downstream for total coliform as well. And all those repeat samples for this particular site were negative.
So they were all negative when you retested?
That's correct.
Is that normal?
Yes, it does happen occasionally. We suspect that this site, there were some hygiene issues in the collection tap. And we've seen that before. If the site isn't properly cleaned, and you can just kind of tell walking in. Sometimes this might happen, but it's not very frequent.
Okay, thank you.
And these are sites out in the collection system, so we won't, obviously they're random public buildings that we're sampling at.
I have another question, if I may. Yep. This is Dwayne. Mike Stover, we put a contingency on everything, and I understand why, but what incidence percentage do we use those contingencies?
Do we always use the contingencies, or half the time we don't even need them? What happens to the contingencies on these projects generally?
I don't have a percentage for you, but we do use them quite frequently. Things usually come up, and it really depends on the type of contract. For example, a lump sum contract such as Muddy Creek. Plant projects are complicated. There's things that you just can't predict, can't see without tearing some walls down. Something comes up that we need to, we use the contingency. And then if nothing comes up, that money just doesn't get spent, doesn't get used.
Okay.
On a unit cost contract, for example, like a rehab project, we include a contingency amount. We might be able to add additional quantities and get more work done with that contingency, and those get used more frequently.
So do we dip into the contingencies most of the time?
I would say over half, but we rarely use the full amount.
Okay.
It's just an insurance policy for us.
And the PO is not issued with the contingency amount. So the board approves the contingency, but that is not part of the amount that's issued to the contractor.
Right.
Okay. If there are no other questions on the water wastewater side, I'll turn it over to Jan.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Mike. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm on my iPad because I was having some computer issues. So let me know if you can't hear.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay,
good. Thank you. Haynesville Road Landfill, we ended the year with exceptionally high tonnage at that site. We took in 281,228 tons during the fiscal year. So that's the highest tonnage we've seen at that site in 20 years. It's 2001 was the last time we exceeded that amount. And we were helped out tonnage-wise over the last couple of months of the year by construction-related soil that was taken, that was generated downtown by Forsyth County, where they're renovating some of their county buildings downtown. So you can see the big jump in the last couple of months of the year from that source. At the construction and demolition landfill, we did not finish the year ahead of budget or ahead of last year. We were below both of those numbers. We took in 43,177 tons at that site. The last several months there have been trending upward, so this summer we may see some increased tonnages there, but right now we're below the budget and below last year. At the yard waste sites, we don't always update you on those, but we'll give you an update since it's the end of the year. We took in 39,207 tons, so we were ahead of the budget and ahead of last year at those two facilities. That's our usual tonnage update for the solid waste facilities. And we had one more thing that we wanted to discuss with you today. This map shows various parcels surrounding the Old Salisbury Road landfill. And let me walk you through what the map looks like. The red boundaries, the parcels that are outlined in red, are the ones that are currently owned by the city. So the cross-hatched one that you see at the entrance to the landfill is the 1.1 acres, I think it was, that was on the agenda last month for discussion, where there's a couple of a developer that would like to purchase that property. That item was tabled, but we wanted to show you that where that's located relative to the rest of the landfill and make you aware of another parcel. It's outlined in orange on this map that has become available for sale. It's about 32 acres and it's priced right now at $249,000. It's immediately adjacent to the landfill, as you can see, and would provide another access to Old Salisbury Road in that rectangular piece that goes out and has road frontage. So it's currently zoned residential. As I said, they want $249,000 for that. And we feel like there could be some benefits to owning that parcel that's adjacent to the property that the city already has. It would provide a buffer from the landfill operations to the nearby residential areas. And it also could potentially expand the options that would be available for the post-closure use of that site. Relative to what Jeremy was just talking about. It would give another 32 acres of undeveloped wooded property that could be added to the property already owned, should it be designated for a park or green space or some other kind of community resource.
Jan, it's Tom.
Yes. Yes.
Is there a house on that lot that fronts on Old Salisbury?
You know, I don't think so. I can't see, from the aerial photography, it looks like there's not a house. I've not actually walked on the property. I've never been on it. I don't think it's been for sale before, but I think it's all undeveloped at this point.
Well, I'm sure there were issues when this original entrance was done. And I'm wondering if we would run into all kinds of issues, I would think, with residential people down there if we didn't have a wide swath to go in on, and that's just one narrow lot. But they are together, is that correct? It's not two separate parcels?
Well, it is two parcels, but it's owned by the same person, same entity. Right, right. Okay. And there are houses on those other rectangular parcels to the south. There definitely are houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the area.
Yeah, so Tom, I'm on Google Maps, and on Old Salisbury Road, as Jan just said, in those black rectangular, there are lots of houses.
Yeah.
But then it looks like the big square yellow is all woods.
Mm-hmm. So we just learned about the sale of these two parcels last week, and obviously are interested in potentially purchasing.
Another question. It appears is there a pond actually on the property?
There is, yes.
Okay. So really would be somewhat inhibited in using it for any kind of disposal purposes with all that streams running across that, I would assume.
Yes, I think that's correct. You can see the blue lines represent the perennial streams, and there's a fairly significant stream that runs along our property line with this.
Right. So really, our only purpose that we could use it for would be some sort of buffer zone, it sounds like.
I believe that's true, yes.
Buffer and to prevent
somebody from building next door.
Yeah.
It is currently zoned.
Basically buffer, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Harold Day. And we're selling that other piece for $150,000. Is that correct?
Well, that's the staff proposal.
Right. And they own $250 for this. I think we need to buy it for $100,000 difference, just for the buffer, if nothing else. Are we going to vote on this today?
No, we did not have it on the agenda. Sorry, Jan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we did want, since there is other information that's kind of surfaced since last month, we wanted to make sure you saw the full picture of what our options are. So in Marilena, you're on the call, right? I mean, and Chairman Tuttle, I'll defer to you. I don't know if we could if it's even an option to bring it back and vote since it's not on the agenda.
Right.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chairman. But yes, it's not on the agenda. It hasn't been noticed. So I wouldn't add it to the agenda now. Yeah.
I'm a little worried that I agreed with our lawyer for the first time.
The first time?
In a long time. But Courtney, I mean, we have Mr. Patterson as a guest. Did we want to talk? I mean, I think you're hearing, strong feelings about the fact that we like buffer, and I don't think any of us really know whether one site is worth $250 or not, but the buffer potential of any of our long-term sites is interesting to a lot of us. Do you want to discuss the hash marked Is that your purpose to discuss the hash marked piece on our PDF?
Yeah, so yes, as you mentioned, we do potentially, or typically purchase land as buffer and are interested in that. Opposite from that, there is the request to sell this hashed area, Mark. And so I know there was some conversation about it last month. And so Mr. Patterson is here to answer any questions, but Jan and I did want to get the commission's thoughts on bringing the item back or not.
And so, Mr. Patterson, would you mind saying a few words and explaining what you or your client's purpose of the purchase of the Freebridge Road and the Old Salisbury Road corner?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I was able to look at the YouTube version of last month's meeting, so I did make note of the concerns or the items that the commission raised during the deliberation on this originally. First was the deed restriction, noting that there's an adjacent landfill, and certainly our client has no problem with that being in the purchase deed. That would be an obvious restriction that they would certainly agree to. I think you had some concerns about you're normally in the business of buying property, not selling property. And I think with this new property becoming available, we're sort of seem to be working in the same direction here, where we can help fund by the sale of this little piece, a much larger piece in the back to further enhance your buffer situation. The one that I want to talk about just in a little bit of detail is the concerns about screening. Obviously, I would imagine the reason that width was purchased from the landfill out to Old Salisbury Road was for a screening purpose. However, we're talking about putting up approximately 20 to 25,000 square foot retail center that would front Old Salisbury Road. You'd have a building there rather than vegetation to rely on for the screening. Any areas that were outside the building, we certainly, in this area that we're purchasing, could offer an opaque fence. I think Jan and I even discussed enhancing the landscaping on your side of the property line that would be created. So we're certainly interested and agreeable in offering, enhanced buffering and screening options between this property and the landfill, so that there's no concerns about folks being able to see in there as they drive by or from any other perspective.
Mr. Patterson, I don't get to vote unless there's a tie, so maybe I'll ask the first question just as a point of reference. Jan, probably heads up, Jan, I'm going to ask you how many truck traffic is in there a day. But, one concern would be that if you have a retail center fronting Old Salisbury Road, and then we have, let's say, a large number of trucks going in and out of there every day, that is not a screening necessarily from sightline screening, it is a traffic concern. So Jan, any thoughts of how many trucks on average every day?
I know Haynes, the numbers for Haynes better. It's probably close to 100.
So I guess, Mr. Patterson, that's my question, is if you have a retail center facing to the east, which is facing Old Salisbury Road, and immediately to the left of that, or the north of that center, we've got 100 trucks going in and out of there, 10 an hour, let's say. And what is your client? Does your client have concern? And I guess I'll leave it at that. Does your client have concern with that?
Well, they're aware of everything that's in play here, the landfill entry drive, the construction landfill behind it, et cetera. And they've not raised any objections to me relative to landfill construction traffic going in and out of that driveway. We were proposing 2 entrance drives to the retail center, one off Old Salisbury Road, another off of Freeburg Church Road. So there would be 2 ways in and out of the retail center.
Cool. Other questions for Mr. Patterson?
I have one. Once you've built, how close will the wall of your center be to that entrance road?
We are going to be the closest the wall is going to be to the new property line is about 40 feet. And I think we would have another 40 feet between it, maybe even 50, between the new property line and the entry drive. So we're talking on the order of 90 to 100 feet of separation in there.
Okay. Any concern about the vibration of those heavy trucks coming in and out?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We obviously would address that in the design of the foundation for the building. Obviously, we'd have to do that, and it certainly would be wise to do that knowing what's adjacent. But again, we have some separation there. We can certainly address that in the foundation design.
Mr. Patterson, my name's Tom Griffin. Are you required in a development to do some sort of screening on your own property? Aren't you required to do something? I'm not sure I understand. Sounded like you were talking about helping fund enhancement on our property. Did that preclude you from doing anything on your property?
No, we had originally proposed to have a strip of heavy landscaping on our side between the new property line and our paving. Jan and I had also discussed the possibility of increasing the landscaping that currently exists on your side at our cost to further enhance the thickness and the density of that vegetation in there.
Okay.
So Bobby, what's the actual dimension of the property that's hatched from north to south?
Wesley, north to south means the long direction or the short direction?
The long direction. Long direction.
That property is approximately 300 feet deep, I believe.
Okay, 300 feet deep, but from the edge, so from where our drive is, going south, going down the sheet, how far is that from our drive to the property line?
40 feet.
I think you've got about a 40 or a 50 foot strip in there based on where we're proposing the new property line to be.
Okay, so 40, and then you've got a 50 foot. So I'm just trying to get the actual dimension of the hatched area.
Yeah, the hatched area at the rear next to the landfill is approximately 140 feet. Out at Old Salisbury Road, it's about 165 feet.
I got you. Okay. All right. So basically, you'd be building on only 50 to 60 feet of that hatched area.
Standing in Old Salisbury Road, looking in, we'd be building on about 100 feet of it. You got our 140 feet that we're proposing to purchase, plus about another 40 to 50 feet that would be left of your property between the drive and the new property.
I got you. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're fully 100 feet into the new purchase property with the building itself.
I see. Could you use less than that?
I don't think so at this point, Wesley, based on the site plan that we've got laid out and the parking that we're going to have, and quite frankly, also the buffers that we want to generate in there, knowing what we're building up against.
Okay. All right.
Other questions?
So Bobby, you're correct. I mean, I'll at least voice my original thought is that we should be buying versus selling property, because we're always in the air about buffers and trying to stay away from people, because it may start out a wonderful relationship, but down the road something happens and here we go again. So that's why I asked the question, in order to try to maybe help in what you're trying to do, keep as much land as we can keep, but still let you do, minimum whatever it is to do what you have to do at the time. So, okay.
And I think that's where we are with what we're proposing at this point. We proposed this once we got something laid out, and I think that's where we are, Wesley.
Okay.
Courtney, what do you need from us?
Well, I guess I need some direction on, does the commission want us to bring it back for as an agenda item next month?
I think I'd be amenable to that. I'd like to bring it up for agenda issue. I know the one reason we tabled it was because Jan was not available. And thank you, Jan, for sending me all that information you sent on the hydrogeologics and all, which made me feel a lot better because I wasn't sure about it then. But I've got a little more information as far as groundwater flows and all. I feel a little bit better about it now. Plus, certainly would like to bring it to the commission about the purchase too.
So let's if I may suggest, let's separate the yellow box from the red hash box.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chris, or someone else that wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's Chris, right? Randall, right as you were saying that, I was saying that purchase makes this even more attractive because this could help pay for a good part of that purchase. So just that intrigues me and makes me more in favor of this. I know it would be two different agendas.
I had an unstable. Yeah, I know my internet broke up. So could you say that again?
I know it would be two different agenda items, but I would be interested in seeing both of those on the agenda, both the sale of this piece of land and then the purchase of the other one.
Me too.
I'll second that or third it.
Okay. All right, Courtney, I guess you've at least you've got three or four.
Okay. Yeah, I think that gives us some direction, and we'll just plan on having, it'll be two different items, but we will plan on having those on the agenda next month.
Courtney,
yes.
Make sure that we see the language in the document related to the item we're looking at selling, possibly related to the buffers. I'd like to know all of the details about what's going to be in the document, in the actual legal document, as to the wording that's going on there. That's sort of like Wesley said a while ago. Yeah, we go off, we feel good to start with, but somebody 20 years from now has heartburn over the thing, and we're sitting here trying to figure out how to solve that problem 20 years from now.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. And I would like to echo that. I've got the site blown up on Google Earth in a big way, and I want to make sure the commission members see sort of exactly what 40 feet and 50 feet buffers are. That's 30 yards. That's not much. And so I want to, if we are going to proceed with this, I'd like to make a really informed decision of how close a new retail center is going to be to our entrance. And let me, because what you have on the screen, Courtney, does not do justice if you blow it up, as I've done on my iPad. And so let's just make sure, since we're going to be in person, that we'll be able to have that.
Okay. Yes, we can.
And before we move on, this is Charles Wilson. Have we seen elevations, and do we have specifics about sort of proposed use beyond it just being a retail center? Because the nature of the use would probably be relevant as well.
Yeah.
Thinking about selling it.
I've generated a site plan that shows the heavy landscaping, shows where the building will be on site, shows the parking, shows the entry drives, et cetera. So we've gone that far, at least at this point.
Okay.
Do you know what the uses will be, or how you're going to try to market the uses?
It would typically be the typical split you would see in a retail center. I'm sure there'll be some service type uses. There'll probably be some straight up retail. There may even be some food related items, et cetera. So typical mix, I would think you would see in a small retail center.
And this is Chris Parker. I'm assuming, since this is so close to Peters Creek Parkway, that we do have sewer out to this piece of property.
I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. So you're saying you want to know if we have sewer in Old Salisbury Road?
No, just that piece of property that you're pointing out that we're thinking about selling. Because I would imagine if we don't have sewer, then that expands what's necessary.
Do we?
Especially if you have a restaurant.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, and we'll try to get that for next month too, unless Mr. Patterson knows. You know, the Davidson County line is very close, so I don't know if we serve that area or if that's Davidson County.
I'm not sure right now. We do have a survey of the property, and I know there's some fairly significant development immediately across Freeburg Church Road. There's a retail center there. There are 2 restaurants there immediately across Freeburg from us. So yeah. I don't know whose service territory those fall in.
So we'll have that information as well. I'm just not sure. There are some properties that we serve outside of the county line. And then there's
Courtney, I've actually got it pulled up on GIS. There's public sewer up to the retail at the corner of Freeburg Church Road and Old Salisbury Road, but it doesn't front the property in question. But it looks like it could easily be extended up that direction.
So it's so we have sewer that ends somewhere up here then?
Go down a little bit, down right there.
Okay, so it could serve this property then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're uphill from that corner, grade-wise.
Okay.
May I interject for 1 second to correct something I told the commission earlier? This is Marilena. I checked the commission's bylaws. It doesn't say anything about adding an item to the agenda, but it does say that we follow Robert's rules, and I checked Robert's rules briefly, and it appears that it is possible to add an item to the agenda if that's the desire of the commission, but it would require a motion during the, at the outset of the voting portion of the meeting, and then for the entire commission, I believe, to adopt that item as part of the official agenda.
Thanks for making that clarification. When I served on the planning board, there were a time or two where something was added to the agenda the day of the meeting.
Yes.
One of the things that we had always wondered about was, you know, we publicize our agenda, and we would hate to vote for something that the community didn't have a chance to respond to, but we can do it. Right. Not to try to hide something from the public, but we can, when an issue comes up like this, we can indeed vote for it.
Yes, you'd vote, and then the commission members would vote to adopt it as the official agenda with the additional item. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I mean, Courtney, I think you're though getting head nods that the commission is interested in this, and so, I mean, all we know that it's for sale and a price, but we have nothing on which to vote in terms of approving a purchase, do we?
No, and I think Mr. Griffin had wanted to see the exact language in the that would be put in the deed. So
no, I'm talking about the purchase of the orange box, not
that piece. Yeah, that one's a little, I guess, preliminary. We don't have all the information we need. So if you were going to vote on something, it would probably need to be the one that you saw an agenda item on last month, and we'd push off the other one till next month. But
yeah, I mean, there's no reason why not just to wait till next month and have both items on the agenda at that point and go from there, right?
Yeah, that would be my choice. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Mr. Patterson, thank you. Courtney, I think looking at the clock, let's proceed.
All right, thank you. Mike Quivesto.
Yep. Good afternoon, commission members. With the recent end of the fiscal year, we'll wait to show you the final revenue and expenditure numbers for FY21 until next month, when most of the accounting entries and adjustments will be final. As for this slide, it shows our past due balances dropping slightly in May to $3.4 million. As Courtney mentioned earlier, there's now emergency rental assistance program application help through the Forsyth County Department of Social Services, and we'll be working to inform our customers of those opportunities for assistance moving forward. This slide shows the history of the delinquent accounts, which also went down slightly in June. which is good news. It's incremental progress, and we'll continue to monitor and address this into the new fiscal year. Want me to just take it to the agenda items here, Courtney?
Yes.
Okay. Item 2 is the one operations item, which is consideration of a resolution authorizing execution of various agreements regarding proposed water and or sanitary sewer improvements to be installed within various developments. This month, we have 3 developer agreements with a total of $315,300 for water and $330,090 for sewer. Moving to the finance items with item 3, which is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for sewer mainline cleaning. Utility field operations has a need for sewer mainline cleaning. This service contract involves hydraulically and mechanically cleaning just over 700,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer mains in order to remove sludge, dirt, sand, grease, roots, and other solid or semi-solid material to restore the lines to a minimum of 95% of the original carrying capacity. A request for proposals was issued to provide this service, and proposals were received from 6 vendors on June 16th. An evaluation panel of 6 staff members reviewed the proposals. Based on the evaluation panel's assessment, it is recommended that the contract for sewer mainline cleaning be awarded to Taplin Group, LLC, and the estimated award amount of $882,310. Terms of the RFP reserve the right for the Commission to extend the service contract for as many as 2 additional 12-month periods for a potential total estimated contract value of $2,646,930. Staff recommends approval.
Mike, can I ask you a quick question? Taplin Group on the narrative page says they're from Kalamazoo, Michigan, but we gave them credit for being in state. I assume they have a location within North Carolina?
I believe they do. Jerry, can you help clarify that, please?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, and also, I guess this one wouldn't change it because it would only bring hydrostructures up to 330, but they get a 0 and it says they're from Pittsburgh. And
Jakira might answer that. I think he's in the.
Yeah.
Yes. So good afternoon, Chairman Tuttle and members of the commission. So hydrostructures did not provide the required documentation to get the business location point. So although they're located in Pittsburgh, a firm is required to not only have a physical location, but submit evidence that they pay taxes for their employees in North Carolina.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, moving on to item 4, which is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for system-wide sewer rehabilitation phase 4. Bids were received May 11th for this project, which involves a variety of types of sewer-related work at multiple locations throughout the collection system. Bids were scheduled to be received on June 8th, but fewer than 3 bids were offered, and the project was re-advertised, at which time 2 bids were received, with KRG Utility, Inc., the low bidder, at $4,340,786.25. KRG has agreed to subcontract a minimum of 5.05% with certified minority-owned businesses and 5.02% with certified women-owned businesses, meeting the goals established for this project of 5% and 5%. It is recommended that a contract for this project be awarded to KRG Utility, Inc. in the total bid amount of $4,340,786.25, and that $225,000 be available for contingency if needed. The engineer's estimate for the project was $4 million. Okay, items 5 and 6 are the items for the Nielsen Water Treatment Plant Modernization Project, construction and construction administration engineering services for Black and Veatch that Mike Stover has already discussed. Are there any additional questions regarding those items at this time? Okay, item 7. Consideration of a resolution authorizing a sole source purchase order to Evoqua Water Technologies, LLC for the Muddy Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. The Muddy Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant is equipped with 5 secondary clarifiers. These clarifiers are sold and serviced exclusively by Evoqua Water Technologies. Staff is seeking to procure a replacement gear drive unit for this critical process area that has failed after 40 years of service. Staff requested quotes and received a quote of $69,000 from Evoqua to manufacture and install a new circular gear drive for the number 2 secondary clarifier. Staff recommends approval of a purchase order in that amount to Evoqua Water Technologies, LLC.
Tom Griffin.
Yes, Mr. Griffin.
4 years, it failed in 4 years, is that correct?
40 years.
40.
Okay, thank you.
40, sir. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8 is consideration of a resolution authorizing a sole source purchase order to Andritz Separation, Inc. for upgrades to the biosolids drying facility. The biosolids drying facility was constructed and installed by Andritz Separation and began operating in 2009. The National Fire Protection Association 652 code was recently updated, and it requires additional safety measures that do not currently exist on the dryer system. Since the dryer system and its controls are proprietary, the required safety and system upgrades can only be performed by Andritz. On November 12, 2019, the Commission awarded a purchase order to Andritz for engineering and design services to evaluate the drying facility and provide recommendations for necessary upgrades to bring the facility into compliance with the new regulations. The quote for equipment and installation to bring the biosolids dryer facility into compliance is $438,135, and staff recommends approval of a purchase order in that amount to Andritz Separation, Inc. Okay, item 9 is our annual item for information only, and it relates to new 3, 5, and 10-year interest rates for financing water and sewer special assessments. The rates for FY22 are unchanged from FY21. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Do any of the commission, we have agenda items 1 through 8 to approve. Item 9, as noted, is just information only. Do any commission members want to pull any of the items from a consent agenda motion?
If not, I would move approval for items 1 through 8.
This is Wesley Curtis. I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion among the commission members? Hearing none. Patrice, would you mind calling the roll call vote, please?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Commissioner Wesley Curtis already approved. Commissioner Harold Day?
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines?
SR say yes.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker, I got your approval. Commissioner Charles Wilson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Alan Younger?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion passes. Courtney, are we going to do capital improvement projects?
Yes. I'll share my screen again, and then we'll wrap up with that.
Hey, Courtney, before we move on to that, if I could just mention one thing. This is Chris Parker. You mentioned that Nicholas Chen, hopefully he's still involved in this meeting and he's listening. And I just want to say a couple things to him. One is, my kids went to high school, I believe, with you, and my daughter just graduated from Wake, and I know you're a rising senior at Wake. So take this opportunity to learn from this great team. We have the second best water in the country. So learn from these ladies and gentlemen about how they do things right. And hopefully, as you see that, you will be inspired to work in this industry. And maybe at some point, we're gonna see you after you graduate. So I just want to give a shout out to you and kind of encourage you, Nicholas, in that, and also say hi to your brother Jonathan as well.
Here, here.
Thank you. Okay, let me turn it over to, let me share my screen again, and then I will turn it over to Shane.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all had a great weekend. So first up is Kernersville Sewer Rehab Project. Notice to proceed for this project was August 31st of last year. So far, we've spent about 37% of our contract amount. We've completed 55 out of 125 projects to date. So here we have our progress map. The black outline is the project boundary. Everything in green we've completed, and the red is the work we still have remaining, and the yellow is the upcoming projects. Water main improvements. This is one of our newer projects. Notice to proceed was December last year. So far, we've completed 4 out of 19 project sites. Over here, you can see the project map. All the little dots are each different project site. The little dots in green is what we've completed, and you can see that we still have a lot of red in Kernersville and Louisville. We'll be working on those. Roswell Lift Station. So far, we have spent about 92.4% of the contract amount. This project is almost complete. Well, the force main installation has been completed. The gravity sewer line is about 97% complete, and the lift station itself is finished. And here is the progress map. On La Plata Drive, that is the last sewer line they need to install, and then what's remaining is just demolition of the existing lift stations. And here you can see, this is looking from Alverstone Drive. This is the site after it's been seeded. It's the site restoration. And here is another view from Alverstone Drive, looking down the project corridor. North Mill Creek project, notice to proceed was February of last year. Should be completed by November 22nd of this year. The 42-inch pipe has been 40% installed. The 36-inch pipe installation is about 46% complete. Here is the progress map. As you can see, we make quite a lot of progress in Linda Circle down at the right lower left-hand side. And then up on top, Scott Hine Park Drive. We've made a lot of good progress there. And we've started working on Bethania's Park, right there in the middle. And here is a picture of us crossing Mill Creek. The cofferdam, sorry. Forgot what it was called for a second. The cofferdam has been set up, and the bypass pump is also set up on the right. And to the left, you can see that's actually the creek water coming out of that pipe. So that's what we'll be doing next. Thank you very much. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. So that's all we've got for the commission today, unless there's anything else that anyone needs to discuss with us.
Any commission members have anything they'd like to bring up before the commission? Okay, Mr. Day.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to second that motion.
You don't know what the motion was yet.
You're quite predictable, Mr. Day.
That's right.
I'm sorry, who seconded that motion?
That was Dwayne, second Mr. Day's motion.
Well, thank you.
And Patrice, this is, I think, the last roll call vote we're going to have to do.
Yes. I think you should do the honors, Mr. Tuttle. No, I'm joking. Oh. No, I'm teasing.
Okay, good.
Okay. I'll start with Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Day.
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin.
It's not a hard decision.
Yes.
Commissioner Hines.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Jernigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Long.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
And Commissioner Younger.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you to staff. Go ahead, Tom. I thought Tom was going to want to vote on that motion separately, like he was going to. Okay, so as a reminder, presuming that we all want to get back to eating lunch, we'll see you at noon, the second Monday of August. And those that don't want to have lunch, we'll see you at 12:30. We'll be starting promptly. Thank you to staff. Thanks to the commission. Hope you have a great week. Thanks for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.